from stillbirths, asthma in children, cardiovascular disease, so heart disease, stroke, dementia in old age, many cancers. The range of different diseases that smoking causes is quite extraordinary. Once people start smoking, they become addicted. The whole point of the smoking from the point of view of the industry is people's choice is taken away because they find it incredibly difficult to stop.
That was Britain's chief medical officer speaking out in favour of government plans to make Britain a smoke-free country. And the landmark smoking ban cleared its first hurdle on Tuesday evening. Members of Parliament voted overwhelmingly in favour of a bill that would raise the legal age for buying cigarettes every year, ultimately meaning that anyone born after 2009 would never be allowed to buy cigarettes legally. The bill still has to clear another reading and in Parliament's upper house. Not surprisingly, the legislation has sparked strong opinions on both sides.
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, might as well make it a smoke-free Britain.
Banning something has never been a solution to anything.
Vaping is such a part of young people's culture at the moment. I think everybody's vaping nowadays.
Smoking's bad, and we're better off without it.
Let's get more from our correspondent, Charlotte Chelsom-Pill in London. Welcome, Charlotte. Let's start with the critics of this proposed ban. What were their arguments?
Yeah, although the critics, as it turned out in the vote today, were in the minority, they were among the most vociferous ahead of this vote today, and they count among them two big names in British politics. You had former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who said that this legislation is absolutely nuts. You also had former Prime Minister Liz Truss, who said that it was unconservative. Now, among those who were against this legislation, members of Parliament, were those on the more libertarian side of the governing Conservative Party. They say that banning what would effectively be a ban on smoking is an attack on personal freedom. They had some concern that it could set a precedent, perhaps bring about other bans going forward. One MP said that he wants to live in a society where people have freedom of choice to make their own decisions, even if those decisions are considered the wrong ones. So that's some of the kind of ideological opposition to this. There were some opposition to some of the more practical elements implementing this. One MP, Member of Parliament, said today that he was concerned that by effectively banning smoking, you'd be making it cooler, perhaps even encouraging it. He also voiced concern that it would promote or would create in a black market, which would be difficult to regulate.
Right. And outline for us, please, the government's case, which of course won the day.
Indeed, well, the government and indeed those many who are in favour of this legislation put forward the very clear health motives behind it. They point to the fact that smoking is the UK's biggest preventable killer. It results in tens of thousands of deaths in England every year. One Member of Parliament who celebrated this legislation going through this next stage said it would also save the health service here a lot of money and a lot of resources. Interestingly, those in favour of this legislation also had a counter-argument to those more libertarian voices who said that it infringed on personal freedoms. They said that, in fact, smoking, by its very nature and being addictive, restricts personal freedoms, freedom to choose. You're no longer able to choose once you're addicted. In fact, the health minister is saying today there is no liberty in addiction, so they are directly trying to counter that opposition.
So if this goes ahead, and I understand it still has to go through the next stage, walk us through how this would actually work in the day-to-day.
Yeah, well, should it come into force, it will be will make the UK one of the strictest when it comes to smoking policy in the world. I do want to say that this is effectively phasing out smoking rather than some sort of immediate outright ban. It won't impact those for whom it's currently they can currently legally be sold tobacco products. The legal age at the moment is 18. What it will do is it will impact those who are born on or after January 1st, 2009. And by specifically putting that date in place, what that will effectively do is it will mean that the legal age for purchasing tobacco products will increase year on year. Ultimately, the goal from the government here is to create what they call as a smoke-free generation. So that's on tobacco products, but also vaping, I think, needs to get a mention here as well. Concerns about that too. They want to make it less appealing and less available for young people, and so this legislation also sets out ways to not have such a range of flavours for vaping, and also looking at packaging as well, making it less appealing for young people.
Now, the UK, not the first country to try and ban smoking. New Zealand did, and then changed its mind after the last election. Could the same happen in Britain?
Well, look, there is still some way to go in the legislative process here, but it does look like it is likely to pass, first of all. But then looking forward, there is expected to be an election this year, and the opposition Labour Party, which is leading in the polls at the moment, it is supporting this legislation, both today in the vote and vocally on the airwaves as well. So it doesn't look like they are going to pose any significant challenges to this, or any challenges to this going forward.
And a word about some of those no votes that came from within the governing Conservative Party. What does that tell us about the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak's leadership?
One thing that has to be pointed out here is that the Conservative members of Parliament had a free vote on this. What that means is they weren't obliged to vote with the government, so could voice, express their own opinions in this vote, and as we know, many of them very strongly held. Had there been a huge lack of support from members of the Prime Minister's own party, that certainly wouldn't have been a good look for him, as I say, in what is an election year. As it was, though, I think he'll be pleased that this has gone through in the way that it has, and that it looks likely to pass and become law going forward, because should he not win the next election, this will form part of his legacy.
Thanks for that, Charlotte. DW's Charlotte Chelsom-Pill in London.